It's 2020 and Final Fantasy VII is out. In many ways, the arrival of Square Enix's Final Fantasy VII Remake marks an inflection point in the Final Fantasy franchise's 30-year-long history. The games, which came to become synonymous with JRPGs in markets outside home territory, brought the genre, its turn-based combat, and over-the-top characters and plots to audiences around the world. It also has a history of innovating in terms of technology. Final Fantasy VII, the series' first PlayStation 1 outing, took advantage of that console's CD-ROM storage to feature CGI cutscenes and pre-rendered backgrounds that went above and beyond anything else on the PlayStation at the time. 2003's Final Fantasy XI was one of the first MMOs on the PlayStation 2, and among the earliest games to support cross-platform online play. 2016's Final Fantasy XV leveraged the power of Square Enix's next-gen Luminous engine, first seen in the spectacular Agni's Philosophy demo, to deliver among the highest fidelity game experiences this generation. Final Fantasy VII Remake is a somewhat different beast. Square Enix typically use a range of in-house engines to create games that deploy distinctive technology, like Hitman's Crowd AI. A handful of other titles, though, like some of the games in the Kingdom Hearts series, were built on Epic's Unreal Engine. Square Enix was the very first developer to publicly sign a licensing deal with Epic for using its Unreal 4 platform way back in 2012. 8 years later, Final Fantasy VII Remake shows us that the wait was worth it. The remake is one of the finest implementations of Unreal 4 that we have ever seen. While we're very late in the 8th generation, a lot of what early Unreal 4 tech demos promised, like the Elemental demo showcased at the PS4 announcement, is finally on full display. However, in terms of technology, this is a remarkable title, a fine demonstration of Unreal 4. PS4 versus PS4 graphics comparison and frame rate analysis. Before we proceed ahead, a quick note to you. We analyze the game's performance by taking some sample scenes from the game and running it through Teardrop, an open source software. Note that this tool gives us a mere demonstration of the game's performance, because an exact one-to-one representation of performance can only be provided by the developers themselves since they have a vast array of tools and profilers. At present, Final Fantasy VII Remake is available on PS4 Pro and the baseline PS4. The game targets 30 FPS on both consoles and largely manages to stay there. It does so, however, by utilizing dynamic resolution scaling. On the PS4 Pro, we see the resolution peak at 2880 by 1620. The base PS4 peaks at a native 1080p. While the game stays at the higher bounds for most of the time on both platforms, intense scenes see a notable drop to visual quality. This is especially apparent on the PS4 Pro when outputting to 4K displays. The sub-native resolution and TAA together lead to a very soft image.
You're not real. You're dead.
I am.
I killed you with my own...
Oh, you need not remind me. It was the crowning moment of our time together. But that was then, and this is now. I have a favor to ask. Our beloved planet is dying. Slowly. Silently. Painfully. Can you bear to see the planet suffer? Cloud.
Looks like we made it. And with nothing but a few scratches to show. Think you might have overdone it?
I followed the instructions to the letter. Maybe it triggered a reaction with the Mako?
Well, let's hope the city's still in one piece.
But the planet's what matters, right? I mean, this must have helped some.
After all that, it had better have. Anyway, let's get going. We in Sector 8?
That'd be just down there.
All right then, lead the way.
You got it. Huh.
it to me. Don't stop now.
Let's kick it up a notch. Fire on the back.
Watch this. Let the rook see it at first action.
Back of the
Engine overview. The Final Fantasy VII Remake makes use of Unreal Engine 4. It's one of the last Unreal 4 titles we'll be seeing before the 8th gen comes to a close. This means that a number of iterative engine improvements and feature additions make their way over. The fact that it's an Unreal Engine 4 title makes doing a graphics deep dive somewhat easier. After all, we're dealing with a known quantity. Unreal 4, as implemented in Final Fantasy VII Remake, features a deferred renderer, enabling a large number of dynamic light sources to appear on screen at a given point of time. Dynamic lighting is a big part of the visual makeup of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Point lights from artificial sources, such as signs and street lighting, add significantly to the environment in and around Midgar. It's a nice contrast how so much of the renderer is dynamic, compared to the original Final Fantasy VII's reliance on pre-rendering. The game makes use of Unreal 4's physically based rendering pipeline to handle materials. Final Fantasy VII Remake doesn't exactly feature the best materials we've ever seen. However, metallic surfaces like Cloud's sword and other high specular assets acquit themselves well. Duller assets like rubble and the ground surface look quite flat though. This is disappointing, especially when you consider the excellent material rendering work that Square Enix did in Final Fantasy XV with the Luminous engine. This essentially means that the game has several instances of extremely poor textures. Furthermore, the game also suffers from pop-in where NPCs may appear all of a sudden. Character and environmental design. The original Final Fantasy VII prioritized character fidelity above all else. This was a sound call. As a narrative-heavy 3D game on the PS1, a platform that wasn't exactly a computational monster, it was important that character models be allocated as high a polygon budget as possible. Final Fantasy VII managed to deliver decent characters for the time by compromising in other ways, notably its use of pre-rendered environments and fixed camera angles. When it comes to the Final Fantasy VII Remake though, developers aren't forced to work under these constraints. We get a conventional, free third-person camera, giving players more control over what's on screen. The 3-generation leap also means a revelatory improvement to character modeling. Final Fantasy VII Remake's characters, both in-game and in cutscenes, look far better than their CGI counterparts in the original game. They also have an edge up on characters in recent Final Fantasy movies. This is a remarkable state of affairs. Being able to see Cloud, Sephiroth, and everyone else at such a high fidelity makes the game's emotional impact that much greater. Square Enix went above and beyond this gen to ensure that character rendering was as good as possible. Reports indicate that AI was extensively deployed to accurately model in-game facial animation based on the tone of dialogue. The high polygon counts, high-quality character texture assets, and the use of techniques like subsurface scattering for skin mean characters have a near cinematic appeal. Environmental design is also a clear step up. The free camera means that environments have to be fleshed out more than in the original Final Fantasy VII. Unlike remasters, Final Fantasy VII Remake is more akin to a reimagining. This means that many in-game environments are larger and more diverse than before. While it's not an open-world game like Final Fantasy XV, environments are still quite large. LODs for shadow work and assets are generous. The actual assets are something of a mixed bag though. Characters, of course, look excellent, but some environmental assets, like industrial metal piping, can look chunky at times. Particle and post-process effects. As a game that heavily leans on a cinematic aesthetic, a lot of attention has been lavished on Final Fantasy VII Remake's particle and post-processing pipelines. With regards to particles, we see full-resolution alpha buffers being used across the board. This means great quality particles on both the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 4 Pro. We're not big fans of the optimization approach, though. A rather overzealous particle culling model means that high-quality effects with dense GPU-accelerated particle volumes go off-screen almost as soon as they arrive. Also, while some particle effects, especially large explosions, cast light, a large number of day-to-day particle effects like gunfire don't appear to interact much with the environment. This can make fight scenes feel oddly flat at times. The post-process pipeline delivers great results. A heavy depth of field effect is applied to good effect in cutscenes. We have per object and camera motion blur too, both during gameplay and during cinematics. This helps keep the action feeling smooth, even at a 30 FPS update. Bloom features regularly and is a key part of the overall aesthetic design. Many bright light sources, especially street and interior lighting, feature bloom. Screen space reflections and a solid SSAO implementation help ground characters and objects in the environment. Temporal anti-aliasing is also in use. Final Fantasy VII's extensive use of transparencies. Assets like Cloud's hair look smooth and don't present as a horrible, shimmery mess thanks to the use of post-process TAA. How does it stack up to the original? The Final Fantasy VII Remake is 3 generations ahead of the original game. The PlayStation 4 and the Pro are several hundred times faster than the PlayStation 1. Their RAM pools alone are large enough for the entirety of the original game in system memory. This has had a profound impact on the kind of improvements possible. For starters, resolution is orders of magnitude higher, as is the quality of art assets. While the PC version of the original is capable of running at higher resolutions, the game's pre-rendered assets were still designed with the PS1's 480i and lower output in mind. The Final Fantasy VII Remake is designed to look good, even on 4K monitors with the PS4 Pro. As such, texture assets and geometry are massively upgraded over the earlier release. The other big change is the added dynamism. Everything in the remake, from the environment to the combat system to camera positioning, is dynamic. This is in contrast with the original, which is a far more curated experience by design. But because the remake doesn't have to deal with hardware limitations, this increased dynamism works very much in its favor.
Get down here, Merc.
You okay?
Do I look okay? Help a girl out, would you? My hero.
Hey! We'll link up over there! Look after Jesse!
Come this way. This route should lead us straight to Barrett. Are you okay?
I'm fine.
Here, this is for you.
Huh? A flower?
That's right. It's a gift. You know, for scaring those things away.
What things?
Never mind. Think of it as a memento.
Conclusion. Final Fantasy VII Remake does the original justice at every level. It's a genuinely good take on a classic, but it's also a remarkable late-gen tech showcase for Sony's PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 4 Pro. While the low dynamic resolution means that the 4K console delivers somewhat subpar image quality, the full suite of Unreal 4 effects when the game's firing on all cylinders leads to a spectacular overall experience. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from Gaming Bolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.